Wherever it occurred, schooling through the 18th and 19th centuries heavily invested its hours with language, philosophy, art, and the life of the classical civilizations of Greece and Rome. In the grammar schools of the day, little pure grammar as we understand it existed. They were places of classical learning. Early America rested easily on a foundation of classical understanding, one subversive to the normal standards of British class society. The lessons of antiquity were so vital to the construction of every American institution, it's hardly possible to grasp how deep the gulf between then and now is without knowing a little about those lessons. Prepare yourself for a surprise. Classical Athens distributed its most responsible public positions by lottery. Army generalships, water supply, everything. The implications were awesome. Trust in everyone's competence was assumed. Professionals existed but did not make key decisions. They were only technicians, never well regarded because prevailing opinion held the technicians had enslaved their own minds. Anyone worthy of citizenship was expected to be able to think clearly and to welcome great responsibility. As you reflect on this, remember our own unvoiced assumption that anyone can guide a ton of metal traveling at a high speed with 3 sticks of dynamite sloshing around in its tanks. When we ask what kind of schooling was behind this brilliant society, which has enchanted the centuries ever since, any honest reply can be carried in one word: none. No boys and girls spent their youth attending continuous instruction under the command of strangers. Indeed, nobody did homework in the modern sense. None could be located on standardized tests. The test that mattered came in living. The idea of schooling free men in anything would have revolted Athenians. Forced training was for slaves. Among free men, learning was self-discipline, not the gift of experts. The word school itself means leisure. Leisure in a formal garden to think and reflect. Plato, in the Laws, is the first to refer to school as learned discussion. In Athens, instruction was unorganized even though the city-state was surrounded by enemies and its own society engaged in the difficult social experiment of sustaining a participatory democracy. For its 500-year history from Homer to Aristotle, Athenian civilization was a miracle in a rude world. Teachers flourished there, but none was grounded in fixed buildings with regular curricula under the thumb of an intricately layered bureaucracy. There were no schools in Hellas. For the Greeks, study was its own reward. Sparta, Athens' neighbor, was a horse of a different color. Society in Sparta was organized around the concept of cradle-to-grave formal training. The whole state was a universal schoolhouse. Official prescriptions for the population filled every waking minute, and the family was employed as a convenience for the state. Sparta's public political arrangements were an elaborate sham, organized nominally around an executive branch with 2 legislative bodies, but ultimate decision-making was in the hands of a small elite who conducted state policy among themselves. The practical aspect of imitation democracy figures strongly in the thought of later social thinkers, such as Machiavelli and Hobbes, as well as in the minds nearer our own time, who had influence on the shape of American forced schooling. Spartan ideas of management came to American consciousness through the classical studies in early schooling, through churches, and also through interest in the German military state of Prussia, which consciously modeled itself after Sparta. As the 19th century entered its final decades, American university training came to follow the Prussian Spartan model. Service to business and the political state became the most important reason for college and university existence after 1910. No longer was college primarily about developing mind and character in the young. Instead, it was about molding those things as instruments for use by others. When the instructional system of Athens transferred to Imperial Rome, a few schools we would recognize began to appear. The familiar punishment practices of colonial America can be found anticipated vividly in the famous fresco at Herculaneum, showing a Roman schoolboy being held by two of his classmates while the master advances, carrying a long whip. Horace immortalizes pedagogue Orbilius for whipping a love of old poets into him. The word pedagogue is Latin for a specialized class of slave, assigned to walk a student to the schoolmaster. Over time, the slave was given additional duties. His role was enlarged to that of a drill master. The master creates instruction. The slave pounds it in. A key to modern schooling is this: free men were never pedagogues, and yet we often refer to the science of modern schooling as pedagogy. The unenlightened parent who innocently brings matters of concern to the pedagogue, whether that poor soul is called the school teacher, principal, or superintendent, is usually the beginning of a game of frustration which will end in no fundamental change. Pedagogy is a social technology for winning attention and cooperation, or obedience, while strings are attached to the mind and placed in the hands of an unseen master. This may be done holistically, with smiles, music, and light-duty simulations of intellection, or it can be done harshly, with rigorous drills and competitive tests. The quality of self-doubt aimed for in either case is similar. Pedagogy is a useful concept to help us unthread some of the mysteries of modern schooling. That it is increasingly vital to the social order is evinced by the quiet teacher pay revolution that has occurred since the 1960s. As with police work, to which pedagogy bears important similarities, school pay has become relatively good, its hours of labor short, its job security first-rate. Contrast this with the golden years of one-room schooling, where pay was subsistence only, and teachers were compelled to board around to keep body and soul together. Yet there was no shortage then of applicants, and many sons of prominent Americans began their adult lives as school teachers. With the relative opulence of today, it would be simple to fill teaching slots with accomplished men and women, if that were a goal. A little adjustment in what are rationally indefensible licensing requirements would make talented people, many performance-tested adults in their 50s and 60s, able to teach. That there is not such fluid access is a good sign the purpose of schooling is more than it appears. The year-in, year-out consistency of mediocre teacher candidates demonstrates clearly that the school institution actively seeks, nurtures, hires, and promotes the caliber of personnel it needs.